I say this to my Republican colleagues who are defending the indefensible. There will come a day when Donald Trump is gone, but your dishonor will remain.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Welcome to What the Franklin. I'm Chip Franklin here with you. Follow us on iTunes and Spotify, and of course on YouTube, or just go to whatthefranklin.com. Thank you again for being here. Big show today. We're going to dive deep into Trump's tax returns coming up in just a few minutes. Also try to get behind the whole mess with Ticketmaster and Taylor Swift. Now, for many of us, I can't remember the last time I went to a concert and went through, a ticketing agency like Ticketmaster, but it's a freaking nightmare. And so we'll get to that. We'll also talk about gun violence in this country. And I know conservatives say it's not gun violence, it's people violence. It's 400 million guns in this country. And this year, there have been over 600 mass shootings. So, yeah, it's a gun problem. We'll get to that. We'll speak to some folks and try to figure out, is this a local or national issue? And can you do anything locally with no borders between states? That's a big question. And a little bit later on, Mr. Hollywood, Bill McCuddy will be with us. We'll talk a little bit about the world of streaming and just how I don't even watch regular TV anymore. Have you guys made the switch? Have you pulled the plug? Because I did. I got rid of my Spectrum account, and now I'm YouTube TV, which I love. I think it's like $65 a month. It gets everything except local San Diego Padres games, and I'll work that out in the spring. Anyway, so obviously we've been following a lot with Elon Musk and Twitter. And, one of the things that always gets me is, let me just play. This is from Tulsi Gabbard. You might remember Tulsi Gabbard, but here she is bitching about the fact that liberals or just Americans are saying, you can't go on and spout lies that could hurt people. That's a crime. Or at the very least, it's a civil offense. Anyway, this is her on Fox News, again, talking about us, the other side. Listen up.
Right, Laura, big time. What's interesting to me is that before Musk bought Twitter, I don't recall hearing anyone from the Biden administration or the Washington establishment or the EU complaining about how dangerous Twitter is or how it poses.
They don't complain because we're not lying about COVID. We're not lying about the election. I say we, I mean just normal human beings. Anyway, I promise this. This next guy's with us here. He is not only the co-founder of the Lincoln Project and a former Republican. He's author of Running with the Devil and Everything Trump Touches Dies. Rick Wilson joins us here on What the Franklin. Hello, Mr. Wilson. Oh, we don't get any volume. We have no volume from you. Well, while you work on that, I'm going to play a little bit of something here for everybody. This guy is an interesting.
How's that?
There he is. I got you now. Well, I had you now. You there, Rick? Love live TV, don't you?
Hey, how are you?
All right, bud. Hey,
John, it's a beautiful thing, my friend.
Let me ask you. I'm going to play this real short clip, and then I have 3 questions, all in one question for you. Okay. Number 1 is Trumpism dead. Right.
Go.
That's one question. What's the short and long-term future of the GOP? And what the hell is wrong with this next guy?
This man will change the Republican Party.
Herschel.
What happened?
Let me answer the easy question first. What's wrong with Herschel Walker? Every goddamn thing you can think of, Chip. The guy
I meant Lindsey Graham.
Mentally, and I don't mean this in a. Well, Lindsey Graham. That's a whole basket of pathologies on its own. Look, Lindsey Graham is a very desperate soul seeking the next pilot fish, or seeking the next shark to his pilot fish. He cannot find his way since the death of John McCain. He is whipsawed back and forth between pro-Trump, anti-Trump, MAGA, establishment, rhino, crazy, back and forth. He is a lost soul. I really feel bad for Lindsey.
Does he have any skills, though, Rick? I mean,
Lindsey is. I was just going to get to that. Lindsey is actually not a stupid person. He actually understands how the Senate works and could play, I say in a very conditional way, could play a valuable role. But he has made himself into this untrusted and untrustworthy. The handful of non-insane, non-MAGA types in the Senate look at Lindsey as their friend at best. The MAGAs look at Lindsey as, either a threat because he's got a great skill of sucking up to Trump and getting back in Trump's good graces, or as a fair weather friend as well. So it's hard to be Lindsey Graham. It's tough to be Lindsey Graham. And he's not an unlikable person. In person, he's an affable guy. He's not a shitbird. He doesn't act like that one-on-one. I like Lindsey on one level, but he is completely unreliable. And this is the problem with being someone who doesn't stick to their principles and stick to their guns. He is a guy who said Donald Trump will destroy the Republican Party and then said he's the greatest president of my lifetime. I don't know how you square that circle, but Lindsey cannot.
When I was in Baltimore and I was working on WBAL, I got to know Bob Ehrlich pretty well, the governor of and Michael Steele, right? I actually really well. I got to go to my wife and I got to go to the governor's mansion once, and I'm not a Republican, but I wasn't a progressive liberal then, right? This was like 2002, 3, something like that, and it was interesting to see and to hear him, and then to see where he went, because that was a prime example of a guy. I mean, we golfed together, and I got to know this guy. Same with Duncan Hunter. I mean, these were guys that at one point you pull them out of that world, and they seem like normal people for the most part. And then I don't know if it was fear. I mean, everybody jokes about Lindsey Graham, and there's photographs somewhere, but to me, it's much more based.
Chip, I'll tell you the process that I've analyzed as a sort of anthropologist of this phenomenon. In the beginning of ambition, where they thought Trump is stupid, the people around him are stupid, I can manipulate him. That's what Paul Ryan thought. That's what Lindsey thought. That's what Mitch McConnell thought. An awful lot of these Republicans who should have known better, who should have known they were dealing with a con man, got themselves suckered. They got themselves drawn into this bullshit from this guy. And it then evolved into fear, because they started going home to their town hall meetings, and the Trump voters and the red hat guys were like, no, you have to be with Mr. Trump 100% of the time on everything all the time, or we're going to get you primaried and we're going to destroy you politically. And frankly, there's also an element in the minds of a lot of Republicans, and I know many of them who have expressed this to me personally and privately, who say, I'm afraid for my family if I don't back this guy. These people are nuts. They're going to come to my house. I had a member of Congress, I wrote about him in my first book, who told me, he goes, I came off a town hall meeting where I didn't agree with Trump on everything, and my wife's phone was 911ing me because she was getting death threats within an hour of the beginning of this town hall meeting. She's getting death threats because the MAGAs in the audience are so.
Yeah, we're having
so but that fear has evolved. Let me just wrap this one piece up. That fear has now evolved into a very cynical belief that they can maintain their integrity privately, that they can say, I don't like any of that stuff, but that they can play the MAGA base QAnon crazies and the racists for suckers. And that, I think, is one of the most pernicious and dangerous things I've ever seen in politics. Is you can't. Well, can we curse on this show?
Yeah. That's all right.
Let me say, there's a phrase. The guy that used to run our hunt camp when I was a kid growing up, where we used to go bird and deer hunting, he had a phrase. He's like, "You can't fuck a rattlesnake. That rattlesnake's going to turn on you at some point. You can't fuck a rattlesnake." And these guys were fucking the rattlesnake. They didn't understand it at first.
Yeah,
and now they're so deep into it that the political advantage in the primary system, the perverse incentives in the Republican primary system have become so profound of, take the shitbird position, take the bad position, say the election was stolen, lie about everything all the time, and embrace this conspiracy and this cruelty and all this insanity. And they're like, well, that plays off in the primary, so I'm going to do it.
Talking to Rick Wilson, co-founder of Lincoln Project, author of Running with the Devil, Everything Trump Touches Dies. Here's the thing, that there was a time if you were a Republican and you wanted to defeat a Democrat, all you have to do is pull out an appropriations bill and say, look at this, look at this,
Sure.
way, where's this, who, $1 million going to, to study canaries. I mean, that was a winning ticket.
Hell, I can remember I did an ad one time. Because a member of Congress voted to build a tunnel under a road for turtles.
Well,
and it was like $1 million project. And I was like, $1 million turtle tunnel. How does that help our community? Whatever the hell it was. And you're right, though. But I mean, now the Republicans, they talk about spending. They passed a $1.7 trillion with a T dollar tax cut. That 85% of the benefits, and I say this as a fiscal conservative, progressive, 85% of the benefits to that went to people with an average income of over $150 million. It benefited basically about 200 families and businesses in this country, the vast bulk of the tax cut. Get the hell out of here.
We're going to talk about this in a few minutes. House Ways and Means has the taxes now. Trump's 6 returns. I don't know what they're going to find that, that Treasury didn't, but we'll see. Also, probably moving forward, you look at the McConnell and others that used to be allies of Trump. And I don't know who his allies are now, names I don't recognize, the Kerry Lakes of the world, who are calling, Kerry Lake called for a violence, to overturn the Arizona election. I mean, to me, that, the Kinzigers and Cheneys, there's more of them. They were just silent, maybe they didn't feel they could stand up. They got to stand up to this, obviously, as Trump moves towards.
Chip,
what?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are a few right now who are willing to go out and say, I'm not going to back Trump. This is ridiculous. He's off the reservation. He's with racists and anti-Semites. And right now they're saying it. You know what? I knew a lot of Republicans in 2016 who said, he's insulted John McCain, the memory of a heroic POW. He's insulted veterans. He's mocked the disabled. He's done this. He's done that. I could never. And you know what they did? They voted for the guy and they supported him and they backed him and they raised money for him. And they did everything they could to make sure that he got reelected in 2020. I think this sort of like barroom courage we're seeing from a few of these guys, the minute Trump wins one primary, and he will win a primary. He will win more than one. Because even if Trump has 15% of the Republican base, and you've got 5 or 6 other people spreading the peanut butter over that big piece of toast, he's gonna have the majority in Iowa and South Carolina and New Hampshire. And he's going to rack up delegates quickly because he has more name ID than anybody else, including the current boy wonder Ron DeSantis. And all of those people, all those big donors are like, I'm not with Trump. I'm going to stay away from him now. They will bend the knee. They will come back. They will bow down. They will absolutely revert to the same position they were in 2016.
You sound like Joe Walsh. They know the exact same thing you're saying. Joe Walsh.
They know who this guy is, and they're gonna. They know who this guy is, and they're still gonna stick with him.
Here's an irony, Rick, that DeSantis actually strengthens Trump. A national DeSantis actually makes Trump stronger, and people go, "What?" No, if you listen to the guy try to speak on a position,
I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a smart thing.
I could not agree more.
Trump does not go into the details. Trump just, and when DeSantis does, he really honestly sounds like somebody that lost their way in the middle of a speech without a teleprompter and has no idea where to go. And of course, when you do that on a national stage, remember, oh God, was it Perry that came up with, I got 3 things to say. One,
he said, I got 3 departments I want to cut. And it's the Department of Education, that debate that Ron DeSantis had with Trist, and Charlie is a spent force in Florida politics. It was always going to be, Ron DeSantis had every advantage in the book. He should have never debated because he laid himself open to something that Trump picked up on immediately. In that debate, when Charlie Crist, who's a wily old dog, if nothing else, I've known the guy since 87, he's still got a trick or two up his sleeve. No, we're not friends, but he's got a trick or two up his sleeve. He says to Ron DeSantis, are you going to run for president? And DeSantis stood there on, and I'm gonna date us, Chip, on tilt, his brain on reset, going beep 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 boop boop boop, and he couldn't answer. And I promise you, when Trump saw that moment, when Trump watched Ron DeSantis lock up like that, that feral, rabid, animal cunning of Donald Trump in his brain said, I will eat this guy alive. I will rip him limb from limb and beat him to death. And I believe it. If they get in the arena together, I think people are going to be shocked how quickly DeSantis gets a stupid nickname and finds himself flailing around and tries to give Donald Trump a nickname in return. And it goes bing, 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 and a back and forth, and it just goes crazy.
Well, Rick, I know you got a heart out. I appreciate your time. I think that that we're going to learn a lot in the next 6 months.
Delighted to be with you as always, Chip. I got a couple more minutes. If you had you had two questions at the top. We sort of went back and forth.
Is Trumpism dead? Is Trumpism dead? And another no. Okay, and that's
stronger than ever. Stronger than ever.
Really. Can he win?
The authoritarian nationalism that defines Trumpism has never been more powerful in American society. There is no principled conservative. It just doesn't exist anymore. The path to Trump winning, absolutely. He can win the primary. There are more scenarios where Trump wins the primary as of today, all externalities, controlled for, than doesn't. The idea of a Nikki Haley or a Chris Christie beating Donald Trump is laughable. The idea, even Ron DeSantis, let's say Ron DeSantis raises $250 million. The benefit of that money in a Republican primary is de minimis. It doesn't do the work it used to do. And can he win the general? Look, again, that's a long road. There will be a lot of people posting up and fighting hard against him, myself included, and my organizations included. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is a formidable candidate. He's still, even as wounded as he is, a wounded bear is still dangerous.
Yeah, even more dangerous. Have we underestimated Biden?
It's a rare day where Newt Gingrich and I agree, but I thought people misunderestimated, as they said in the Bush world, Joe Biden from the beginning. And I told somebody this in the very beginning, a Democratic friend who said, "Oh my God, he's just so." I'm like, listen, don't mistake the fact that he's affable for the fact that he doesn't understand how to work the Senate and how to work Washington and how to work the House and how to deal with people and how to make relationships, because he does. And I'm going to blow my Republican friends' brains right now. The president that Joe Biden most resembles in the stylistic nature of his relationship,
Ronald Reagan. Yeah,
I've heard that. Who was extraordinary. He was extraordinary at sitting down with Tip O'Neill or whoever it was that he had who had to face up against on the Democratic side and saying, okay, look, you don't like me, I don't like you. You don't like what I want to do, I don't like what you want to do. But we got to move forward in some way. Let's find a simple thing we can agree on. Let's find a small thing we can agree on. And that built a relationship that allowed people to do things. I know this word is alien now to our culture, in a bipartisan fashion that people really liked. And I think that's one thing that's a strength of Biden's people have underestimated from the start.
Yeah, I think that there's a good chance that he could run and win again. Rick, I got to run. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chip. Appreciate you. Anytime.
Well,
talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot.
You too.
Again, that is author and co-founder of the Lincoln Project, Rick Wilson. His stuff is great. So what will happen to Trump's taxes?
House Ways and Means Committee now have their hands on 6 years of Donald Trump's federal tax returns. The Treasury Department confirms that it has complied with a court-approved order to release the returns after the Supreme Court refused to stop it last week. The chair.
So who better to go and talk about taxes than my good friend, Steve Moskowitz, founder and CEO of MoskowitzLLP.com. Steve, first of all, taxes reveal a lot about a person. You can look at somebody's returns and tell a lot about them, right?
Yes, you can. Coincidentally, 6 years is the criminal statute of limitations period.
Really?
Yes. And a lot can be told from tax returns, but there's a lot they don't tell. So here's what we have to watch out for. How much detail comes along with them? And did somebody tell the truth on the returns or not? For example, the most common area of criminal prosecution is where somebody just doesn't report their income. So you have income from a business, you just don't report it. By definition, it's not on the return. On the other hand, you can see a lot from a return. And then what about the detail? So for example, if you said your income was $1 billion, well, where'd that come from? If you saw, oh, well, 100,000 came from this shady source and 1 million came from that shady source, as opposed to it all came from your proceeds of being a professor at the school down the street. So the bottom line is they can definitely tell a lot, but there's a lot they don't tell. So that's what an audit is. An audit, they just don't look at the return and say, well, okay, this is right or wrong. The auditor says, well, show me the receipts. For example, he's been accused in the New York case of overvaluing the buildings for loans and not reporting all the income. So one of the things you would need, what is Trump Tower worth? Well, you get an expert and the expert testifies it's worth X. Another expert feels it's worth something else. You never really know.
And he was telling the insurance company one thing and the government another for the value of something, right?
That's one of the things. And then just like an IRS audit, they want all the support for it. One of the things they would do is they would check the bank statements and say, well, wait a minute, if you've deposited 100 million and you have 70 million on your return, what's the other 30 million? Is the other 30 million unreported income? It might be. Or it might be something as simple as he took a $30 million loan, which is not income, or he transferred from accounts, which is not income. Then we take a look at expenses. So with expenses, we have two areas. First, is the expense valid? So if he went ahead and took a vacation, like when you and I were tiny infants, and remember Leona Helmsley when she went to federal?
Oh yeah, the hotel woman, right?
The hotel in New York, she was known. She advertised on TV in New York as the Queen of Mean because she was really.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, anyway, what happened with her is she had a bunch of improvements done to her home in Connecticut, and she listed them on her tax return as repairs to the hotel in Manhattan. So if you just look at the return, you see repairs expense to hotel. There's nothing wrong with that, except when you go into the detail under it, you find out, well, wait a minute, it wasn't repairs to the hotel, it was to her house. Or you do something else. You put your friend on the books, and suppose you want to give your friend some money, and you say, well, okay, you take a tax deduction by saying he's an employee. Well, he's not really an employee. So the bottom line is, yes, the returns can tell you things, but much like pulling sugar plums and just like doing an IRS audit, there's a lot more to it. You want to see the detail, and there's a lot, if you're going to do it properly, there's a lot of work. What's all the detail coming up to those numbers? Because the tax return, is a bunch of lines with numbers on it, but what's the detail there?
Well,
the
will the IRS be working, do you think, with the House committee that are looking at these? Do they go back to Treasury?
Well, now we get back into politics, and one of the things that maybe I should have opened with is, which Congress are we talking about? Because the current Congress better hurry up if they want to do something, because the next Congress might say, what is this waste of time? Why are you here? Put it all away. And that might happen too.
6 years is a lot to look through, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Also, his returns he's not filing a 1040 EZ. His return is, and he has wages of $30,000 for the year. I mean, with all the business interest, his returns would just be layers and legitimately someone of that wealth, the return would be very complex, and there's all kinds of businesses. And then if you want to get fancy, you say, well, what about transfers between the businesses? And I won't get too technical. Sometimes that's fine, and sometimes that's a problem. So, and an audit, like if someone was going to do a real audit, no axe to grind, just a real audit to see if it was right or wrong, you would need way longer than the amount of time this current Congress is going to be in power. So that's another thing. He might just say, okay, you know what, we'll just wait for the next Congress, and they may have they're not interested.
Part of this almost feels like it was a power play, Steve, that they just wanted to prove that they could get hold of the taxes and the returns. And by the time they go through all this, it seems to me that whatever else New York, Virginia, or the federal government's working with, whether it's January 6th or these documents in Mar-a-Lago, it seems to me that this thing is going to be trailing way behind, right? The way the forensic audits.
Absolutely. And again, I know lots made in the news that he was the first candidate in a long time that didn't reveal his tax returns. But that's why a lot of good people don't want to go in politics, because, Chip, suppose somebody said, we're going to offer you a job here at this TV or radio station, but we want to see your tax returns for a number of years. We'll poke into all your stuff. You say, well, that's really none of your business.
I just remember the time I got audited twice, and the auditor the second time was really nice. And I got to see her just one day at the very end. And she said, you know what? We just want to know about the money you made that you didn't declare, and they allowed me. I had a box full of receipts that the son had made hard to see. And she says, just give me an estimation. But there's no way they would have done that with income, right?
And also, those were the old days, and you got very lucky.
Yeah. Well,
Don't expect that today.
Yeah. Steve, thank you so much, my friend. Great
Always
stuff.
Thanks
Catch
so much.
Steve Moskowitz, Practical Tax, every week. You got a couple of them out there. Go to moskowitzllp.com or give him a call at 888 tax TL. Be well, buddy. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Talk to you later.
Again, that is tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. I don't know how you guys feel about this. Part of me wants to see Trump face the music, right, on every level that he could possibly face the music. But the other part just wants to move him down the road. We're going to get to this in just a couple minutes. But I think one of the things that bothers me the most about Trump is the odor, right? I mean, if you go and you look at and try to get a sense of who and what's happening, I mean, nothing tells you more than this.
You're not a Nazi. You don't deserve to be called that and demonized.
Well, I see good things about Hitler also. The Jew.
That's the world we live in now. And that's what we're going to have to deal with. Coming up a little bit later on in the show, we're going to speak to an advocate for gun control, AR-15s. There've been, like I said, there've been over 600 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year. We'll talk about that with a representative from Everytown for Gun Safety Action Fund. A little bit later, an old friend of mine, Bill McCuddy, will join us. We'll talk about what's happening with movies right now, because I there's so much good stuff streaming. I don't know why you would leave and go to a theater. But let's do something a little bit lighter here just for a second. I guess it's lighter unless, of course, you're a fan. I don't know if you saw the debacle around Taylor Swift and these tickets. It was insane.
We're gonna do a diamonds
Taylor Swift fans furious tonight over a Ticketmaster meltdown that will make it even harder to see the Eras Stadium tour. Ticketmaster says its system wasn't able to handle the millions of fans trying to get tickets.
Now the company.
To me, what else does Ticketmaster do? They sell tickets. I would think that one would be prepared and excited about an event like Taylor Swift. I mean, that's how they make their money. But, in the whole concert world, which is, not my world anymore, although I still go to shows. I mean, but I'm not going to go to an after. I mean, I had a chance to go see Elton John and actually get pretty good seats. I don't want to go. I don't want to go out with, 70,000 other people in an arena. And it has nothing to do with COVID. It's maybe just because I'm an old fart. Randy Nichols is a manager and agent. He's overseen record releases and sold out tours everywhere in the world, maybe with the exception of Antarctica. He's managed artists for combined sales of over 5 million records and $20 million plus in merchandise sales. Also leads growth and strategy for premium digital content platforms. And we invited him here to What the Franklin to try to get to the bottom of this. Randy, how's it going, buddy?
Going all right. How about yourself?
Good. So what the hell happened with this whole Taylor Swift thing? And let's back up a little bit before we get to that and talk about when did Ticketmaster become the preeminent and pretty much the only place to go to get these tickets?
So Ticketmaster kind of came into the market in the 80s, where they flipped the script on how concert ticketing was run. Previously to them, there was a company called Ticketron.
I remember that.
Ticketron was a service. Venues would pay the service of Ticketron to provide ticketing for their venues. A gentleman named Fred Rosen took over Ticketmaster and came in and went to venues and said, we will pay you for the right to ticket your venue. So they completely flipped the script. And what they did is they go, all right, rather than you paying Ticketron $1, we'll pay you $1, but we'll charge the fan $2 in a service fee on top. And that is where the service fee came from. And that is how Ticketmaster gained their dominance, because ticketing went from a cost to a revenue stream.
Wow. Don't some artists hold some tickets back to sell on their own and to try to get around that? Does Ticketmaster fight against that?
So Ticketmaster has in the past had varying leadership around their artist music team, where some teams are more friendly to artists selling tickets on their own. And typically what the rule has been over the last several years, and has been much friendlier than years past, is that artists can sell 8% of their tickets to an approved fan club. And that allows them to get around some of those fees, but there are still some fees, because at the end of the day, something a lot of people don't realize is the customer of the ticketing company is really the venue and not the fan. So some of these fees, the venue is choosing whether to waive rather than Ticketmaster themselves.
Okay. Let's say a Bruce Springsteen concert is at a 50,000 seat arena. Is that too big? Let's say 30,000 seat arena.
Yeah, like 20 arenas usually up to 20,000, then stadiums you're getting to like 50.
Okay, so let's say 25,000 seat arena. Bruce Springsteen. He's not the 1985 Bruce Springsteen, but still really popular. It's going to be sold out. What is the average ticket price for an event like that?
So you're seeing a massive increase in ticket prices over the last few years. And a Springsteen ticket, I think a starting ticket is probably around the $200 range.
Wow.
At this point.
Okay, so 200 times 25,000. What percentage of that goes to the artist? What percentage of that goes to the venue? What percentage of that goes to Ticketmaster? So what will Ticketmaster make in something like that?
So Ticketmaster, the only money that actually, we should take a step back. If Live Nation Ticketmaster is the promoter, then they're making the corporation of Live Nation Ticketmaster is making money on both sides as the ticketing company and the promoter.
Gotcha. And let's back up a second. Tell people what that means. So they'll say, Springsteen will come to them and say, we want to play this venue. And they'll say, all right, so here's the deal. Here's what, I mean, does Springsteen get the call, what he wants to charge, and say,
so basically the way it'll work is Springsteen will go to the promoter. His agent will go to the promoter, say, we want to play this date. We want $1 million to play the show. Then they sit there and do the math that you were just trying to do and go, okay, well, if you need $1 million, we need to charge $198 a ticket to get you to that number. And that's how the ticket price is established. And then that ticket price is then agreed to by promoter and artist team. And then you go to Ticketmaster and say, we're charging XYZ for the ticket. And then Ticketmaster will say, based on our deal with the venue, this is the fee for that ticket.
How many of the tickets that are purchased for an event like that? Let's go back to the big story today. We're burying the lead with Taylor Swift. We're talking to Randy Nichols, who has spent years in this business. So Taylor Swift announces these dates, right? Tickets go on sale, a huge fan base, an amazing artist. The whole thing blows up. Was it foreseeable? What went wrong? And what does that mean for like future events? Because we also know that so many of these tickets, if they're purchased for $200, end up online for $500 or $1,000. What went wrong with Ticketmaster here, and how bad is the scalping end of this?
Yeah, so a few things went wrong. One, they increased the number of shows they put on sale that they initially were putting on sale. Ticketmaster used a program called Verified Fan, which looks at fans, uses analytical data to decide who are the real fans and the biggest fans so that the tickets don't end up in the hands of the scalpers. So they had an idea of how much the demand was from doing this. And they initially announced about 25 shows, doubled that number to 50. But they didn't expand the amount of time that the tickets were going on sale. They put all 50 shows on sale at once. They probably should have spread that out over either a couple of hours at least or a couple of days. So 50 shows weren't going on sale at once, because you may be familiar with a term called a denial of service attack on an internet provider. So they almost had what I would consider a denial of service attack on themselves, because you have the fans trying to buy these tickets. But on top of that, you talk about the scalpers. The scalpers build these bots who can make thousands of attempts to buy tickets in a second. So you have these legitimate fans who got codes through this verified fan system and are in a queue trying to buy them in an organized fashion that Ticketmaster created, while these scalpers are literally creating denial of service attacks, hoping that they're going to trick the system and get the tickets ahead of the fans.
It's insane.
That said, the vast majority of the tickets went to fans. When you A/B 2 stadium shows in the same stadium with an artist that used the verified fan like Taylor and one that didn't, there's substantially less scalper tickets available, but a verified fan still has the right to buy a ticket and flip it. So there are some available there.
Randy, it's easy to understand. It's confusing at the same time. I think looking forward. Thank you so much for your time, buddy. I really appreciate it. Okay.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Great.
Take care, guy. Again, that's the latest on the Ticketmaster fiasco and where it's headed. Obviously, it's an age thing. Although I still want to go out and see shows. You know, I mean, things like Hamilton, and they have a lot of the same issues. You know, when you purchase tickets, the idea of I got Hamilton tickets in San Francisco, so I didn't get to see Lin-Manuel Miranda, but I did. It was early on in the thing, and I think I spent for 4 tickets. I think I spent $2,500. And it was a lot of money. It was worth every penny, I guess. But I get it. You know, this is what's changed in music since I was a kid and playing in bands and traveling. Back in the day, you would put an album out and you would tour to support the album. You would maybe break even on the tour and hopefully get record sales. Today, it's exact opposite. Today, because the record business is so upside down, you go out on the road to make money. And that's a big part of this. To date myself, I saw the Rolling Stones at DC Stadium before it was even called RFK when I was about 10. I went with my sisters, and I remember it was $2 to go see the Rolling Stones. So yeah. All right. Switching gears here. We live in an incredibly violent world, and people will tell you that means they're violent people, no doubt. But it's a lot easier to be violent when you have an AR-15.
On this Thanksgiving Eve, America is reckoning with the violence that is tearing at the national fabric. This afternoon, 4 high school students shot in Philly. Every week, nearly 13 mass shootings. So many we too often forget those that happened last week or last month. 21 children and teachers killed in Uvalde, Texas. 10 people gunned down in a Buffalo grocery store. 5 in Raleigh, 4 in Memphis, 4 in Tulsa, 6 in Sacramento. The list is excruciatingly long.
We know. So the question, of course, here is, what do we do? There are more guns than human beings in this country, and actually twice as many guns as there are adults over 21. And you know, we hear these stories of like the latest mass shooting at the Q Club in Colorado Springs. This is a guy that had threatened to blow up his mother. I'm not kidding, and had a standoff with police, an armed standoff with police just a few years ago. How does this guy get weapons? And I think this comes down to local issues. In other words, how do we make sure that we can protect our neighborhoods? And I know that I've seen this in my neighborhood in Lafayette, which is a suburb of San Francisco. And groups came together. There was a lot of action. But the truth is, if you don't have red flag laws where people can report somebody they think is violent, and I'm not sure I even think that works. I just know that we have to do something, right? Joining us right now, nice enough to be with us here, is Rudy Espinoza from Moms Demand Action, this group, Every Town for Gun Safety Action Fund, all part of this mission to make lives safer, and especially young people's lives. Rudy, thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chip. Happy to be here with you.
What is the greatest issue facing small American towns today? Big cities have a couple issues, and obviously some of that is crime in a city. But smaller towns, and many of these shootings happen in these smaller towns. What can they do? What are they doing to try to make their communities safer?
Chip, you're asking a really big question, right? Gun violence prevention takes a lot of work, and coming from multiple angles, right? You were talking about one. And when we talk about the local level, that is one of the best ways in which we can work to protect people from gun violence.
That's interesting, because that wouldn't be my first instinct. That I would think it would be like a congressional action. How do local communities do it?
Well, it's important. You were just talking about what happened in Colorado Springs. They have red flag laws, but the county sheriff has refused to enforce the laws, and they actually consider themselves a Second Amendment sanctuary county, right? So at the local level, when you have a sheriff that won't protect its people by enforcing a red flag law, like in El Paso County in Colorado Springs, in Colorado, we see that people lose the option, right, for protection. So we think about what happened in Club Q. If the police department had been alerted about this person, and if the sheriff had followed through, that would not have happened, right? So we know that red flag laws work. We just need to make sure that folks are on board in the community at all levels, so that we're protecting people.
So red flag laws, for those that don't know, is when a family member or someone close to someone they see that's exhibiting violent tendencies or making threats, they can report them, and the law enforcement can come and question them, essentially. Is that it?
That's right. And they go by different names in different states. Some, call it extreme risk laws. In California, it's a gun violence prevention restraining, a GVRO, gun violence restraining order. Red flag laws, right? They come by different names, but they all essentially do the same thing, right? If there's someone that's at risk of hurting themselves or others and they own a weapon, then they can report it, and that weapon can be temporarily taken away. So that's the key thing, right? It's temporary until it's determined that they can have their gun back.
Have we given up trying to ban the sale of AR-15s? Does that seem like that's just for another time, that we're not going to reach that now?
No, I think that there are a lot of us in the gun violence prevention movement that are in agreement that we need to ban assault rifles, and that we have to continue doing other work, right? So again, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not just like one easy solution to gun violence, to any gun violence, but instead there are so many different things. An assault weapons ban is something important, and it would minimize the impact that they have when they're used in a mass shooting. That's one way. There's so much more work that we need to continue doing along with that ban. So yes, we definitely support as an organization and as a movement the banning of assault weapons like AR-15. But there's a lot more work that we can do, right? Like making sure that these red flag laws are implemented correctly so that they protect people. 600
mass shootings. It's basically 2 a day. And obviously in many of these cases, I love it when I hear that we're going to make a school area a non-gun zone, like I said, which is to me ridiculous, because obviously the people that do this don't give a damn about that. And it's part of the politics of this that upsets me, is that these are people armed with high-powered weapons going into schools and indiscriminately killing people. To me, that's a fire in the middle of the house. And we're pretending like we can put fireproof windows up. It's already inside. It's a horrible metaphor, but I guess my point is that there are so many guns out there and so many unstable people with access to them that it seems to me that local legislation, as well-intentioned as it is, can only be a small part of what we have to do, and that we should be talking about this literally every day.
We should, Chip. We should be talking about this every day and at all levels, local, state, and federal. It has to happen that way. Otherwise, we're going to continue seeing the number of deaths that we're seeing, the number of killings by guns that we keep seeing, right? California is a great example of seeing gun laws being passed, implemented, and then reducing gun deaths. When we think about how gun violence has increased over the last few years in the US, the country has seen gun violence increase by 30+%. However, in California, we've only seen it grow a little bit over 10%, around 10%. So what that tells us is that gun laws work, gun laws keep people safer. Imagine if in the country we had only seen a 10% increase over a 33% increase. Of course, we'd rather see zero or a reduction, but how many lives would have been saved if we had decreased the increase of gun violence? And we look at California. Governor Newsom in 2022 just passed a package of 8 bills that are meant to protect people. They are about public safety. Gun violence prevention, gun safety is public safety. So we have to remind ourselves that we cannot let the constant cycle of news media, of news on mass shootings, make us numb. We have to continue this fight. It doesn't end.
I think we need to embarrass politicians. I think we need to hear more families, from Newtown, from Columbine to Colorado Springs, and again, it's no surprise that states that have fewer gun restrictions have greater violent crime, and it's and people love the politics of this. I have to discuss the Republicans pull that Second Amendment stuff, and when the Second Amendment was penned by Madison, it took a minute to load a musket and to shoot one bullet. Of course, we know the damage that an AR-15 or even a handgun can do today. It's incredible. And for them, for any politician to pretend like that this is an issue of mental health solely, or it's an issue of law enforcement is insane. Well, they're a liar, and they know it. They know that's not the issue.
Chip, you're right. There is no one issue that you can point to, right? It's multiple issues. And I will say this. The passing of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act this summer was a big deal, right? Almost 30 years since we saw any gun legislation at the federal level. I was present at the signing this summer. I was one of the privileged few that got to see, President Biden, along with Republican and Democratic senators, working side by side to get something done. Of course, there needs to be more done, right? Let me say that. There needs to be more done. And what happened this summer was a huge step forward, right? We're seeing the Overton window moving on gun violence prevention. 10 years ago, any politician talking about gun violence prevention or gun safety would have probably lost an election, no matter what party, Democrat or Republican. We have shifted the narrative because the data is out there. Gun safety laws equal public safety, equal safer communities, right? And that is a fact. Yeah. While respecting the Second Amendment. Let's remember that, right? We're not arguing that we should get rid. I'm not saying let's get rid of the Second Amendment. I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to own guns. Is what you said earlier, is that it should not fall into the wrong hands. That's what we're worried about.
Well, it's inevitable. They're going to fall. When you got 400 million guns,
yes.
They're going to fall in wrong hands. And again, you have gun shows and all these places. You just can't restrict any of it. Rudy, we come back and talk again, please, my friend?
I would love that.
Thank you. You did a good job through all that choppiness. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, see you, buddy. That's, of course, the nature of this business right now, with trying to keep guns and trying to keep people who would use guns apart from each other. It's impossible. Be honest. AR-15s. There's no reason why an American or anybody else in this country should have an AR-15. But the Second Amendment. That's not what it's about. We can have that argument some other time. All right. This next guest is an old friend of mine, and I mean old, and he's been doing this a long time. He is an entertainment reporter and PBS movie critic. He contributes to New York Post and to this other site that I think he gave me the wrong numbers on, and we'll have to talk to him again. My old friend, Bill McCuddy. Hello, Mr. McCuddy. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. It's goldderby.com, which is the industry leader in tracking everything that has to do with the awards season. And man, are they sending me everything. We'll talk about that.
Wow. Yeah, critics, you guys, it's I remember McCuddy right there. Bill McCuddy is his name. I'll fix that for you while we talk. Hey, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Movies right now, the health of films and theaters. I don't need to leave the house, man. There's so much great stuff streaming. And I know everybody says, oh, we'll go back to the movies. But, and again, COVID's not done yet. And we'll probably have another couple of years before people feel entirely safe about being in crowds again. But have theaters, streaming works so well. And I'd rather invest, this money, every time I go out and spend $120 to go to a movie now, which is not insane. If you go to these Cineplex places where you can buy beer and food and all, I can do that at home. Where are we?
Well, the big problem too is for kids that came through the pandemic. They learned that the movies they want to see aren't at the theaters; they're being streamed directly through a couple of different Disney platforms. And so, an opening movie like The Strange this weekend is doing horribly at the box office. They're going to lose a lot of money on it. The answer to your question is: over last year, when we made about $4.5 billion at the box office, we're on track now to do about $8 billion this year, and that's an improvement. But it's nowhere near, let's say, 19 or 20 billion that they did a few years ago. So yes, the trend is going down. People are watching more stuff at home, but they are showing up for things like Top Gun, which is 1 billion or so of that $8 billion this year. So if they're given the right reason, Doctor Strange, Jurassic World, The Dominion, or even the new Black Panther, they will come back to the theaters, but not in the huge numbers that they have in years past. Not so far.
So I heard Matt Damon talking about this, saying without DVD sales and now without, some of the theater big numbers, right? We're not going to be able to see those movies, with Emma Thompson and Gwyneth Paltrow, period pieces from Jane Austen novels. They're dead, except for some,
they're not dead. They're just finding a different place and they're going to a different outlet. Netflix was buying all of those movies until a few months ago. And that's a train that's running 110 miles an hour into a brick wall. I mean, that business model has to start making money, or they can't just keep buying everything. But you're right. I mean, there are no art house movie theaters anymore, not with a few very few exceptions. You can't go see a little independent movie. That's okay if you're used to seeing movies that don't need a big screen. And Hollywood would be very upset with me for saying that. But the truth is, we're watching more documentaries in the last couple of years than we ever did. There's more interest in that. And as you said, we're watching all the best movies are on TV. So,
well, Taylor Sheridan has totally flipped the lid on quality television experience. I think 1883 stands up to almost anything I've seen in the past 30 years. It was so well written and so well done.
And Yellowstone is drawing about 8.5 million people a week, which is unheard of on a
And it's not even his best stuff. I mean,
No.
that particular guy, this Taylor Sheridan, mayor of Kingstown with Jeremy Renner, which is getting nowhere near the press because of the violence and the intensity of it, is amazing. I mean, and I think that it's the character that plays Beth on Yellowstone. I mean, what an amazing, you can't take your eyes off that person when she's on screen. For people that haven't seen Yellowstone, it's, what is it, this fourth season or third or fourth season?
This is entering its fourth. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about what that offers us that movies don't, is to really get to know these characters.
Well, Chip, that's exactly what actors, directors, and writers are telling me when I sit down with them and ask them, when they're going to get back to the movies. They love the opportunity, let's say on a White Lotus, for an F. Murray Abraham who I spoke to the other day, to have like 8 episodes, 7 in the case of the second season of White Lotus. But they get more time to develop their characters. They don't go to the film and see a lot of their best scenes on the editing room floor. So unless it's bloated and doesn't need to be told over a longer period of time, the stigma that was attached to television, years ago, like George Clooney was on ER, so he'll never be a movie star, that's all gone.
I got to tell you a story. So we go back more than 30 years, way back. And when you were on, I was in Baltimore doing a story about light poles that had been stolen. Somebody was stealing light pole. I'm not kidding, like 40-foot light poles. Somebody had stolen like 80 of them
or something, right?
Yeah, right. And so I had a picture of me standing next to the light pole, and you told me the next time you're on television, because I did your show, which was Fox. What is it?
Yeah,
it was before Fox got crazy. Back when, and because you're not crazy, and you said next time you do this, say that's Nan Coulter standing next to me. And I did it a couple times. I was on like 10 shows. I did it on CNN, right? So how many years ago was this? Had to be 20 years ago about, right?
Ann Coulter's still skinny, so it could have been last week.
All right. So I'm calling her to get her on the show, and we're on the phone, and she says to me, she goes, I still remember that joke you made about me with the light pole. And I go, that was Bill McCuddy's fault. He wrote the joke.
Appreciate that.
Anyway, all right. So we can find all your stuff. I want to start doing. Can you start doing this regularly? I'd love to come on Fridays and let's talk movies.
Sure, be my pleasure.
You always say that, then you're hard to find, my friend.
No,
I come and visit me and
say, so we can talk about that in the weeks to come.
All right, buddy. Let's go play golf again soon. I'll see you soon, okay?
Okay, sure.
Find Bill McCuddy, again, entertainment reporter. You can see him, PBS movie critic at goldderby.com. He's the industry source for all that movie stuff. Joining me right now is the one and only Mark Thompson. His show kicks off momentarily. Hello, Mr. Thompson.
Terrific. Good to talk to you, Chip. I
Bill
got
McCuddy
Rick
and I
Wilson coming on the show today, along with Joe Walsh. Going to be a great, great show. No, I got those guests off your list. I can't even. I couldn't get those guys on a call if I was bleeding out on the street.
You get great guests.
I'm so impressed with your guests. I've done a bunch of stuff for a Lincoln Project, a bunch of voiceover
next
stuff.
Week,
for
guess
that.
what I have on next week? I have Eric Swalwell. And
Wow. I couldn't even get Eric Swalwell on as a phoner on KGO.
It takes
he was
a
on
long
with
time.
Yeah.
Eric's
that's
busy
really
guy.
great. Really
you
good.
got to just kiss ass. You're not good at kissing ass. I kiss.
I don't have the
serious
schmooze in me. I don't have the schmooze in me, but it's really cool. I love what you do, and you move them through. You have a good pace to things, so good for you.
For people that haven't seen your show, Mark Thompson Show, go to YouTube, check it out. The Mark Thompson Show. It starts in about 5 minutes, and it's great stuff. You have. And by the way, if you haven't heard this voice, you must have been in a closet for the last 30 years. Yeah, where do we hear your voice?
I do NASCAR, and I do. I've
Sunday.
done a bunch of.
Let me hear. Give me a Sunday.
Exactly.
I know that's not NASCAR, but
NASCAR. This Saturday, the Daytona 500 has nothing on NASCAR.
See, I have that nasal Midwest.
You sound great. You'd be surprised. I mean, my voice is a very particular kind. I have a very sort of big voice, like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chip Franklin. It's very big. But what is oftentimes the commercials want something that's more like an everyman voice, like yours, which is great. So I have to take a lot of. That's what
they go through all the talent and they go back to the guy that has none. See, that's how
on Fridays we do Friday Fabulous Florida. On my show, I do politics, and I also do a lot of stuff that's not politics, and and you do that as well. But I'm just saying, I have a lot of franchises that are kind of just fun and weird and sometimes silly, I know. But anyway, Friday Fabulous Florida is news from, as you might imagine, the Sunshine State. Then at 11, we really jump into politics. It's been a big week for Trump, as you know, as you mentioned on your show. Taxes, the special master thrown out. Also want to talk about moving up the primaries. I have two brilliant political analysts, Jim Avila, former senior correspondent for ABC, White House correspondent for years, and Michael Shore, TYT commentator and from News Nation. So I'm excited about talking to them about that. And then Michael Snyder, the Culture Blaster, comes in. We talk movies. So that's my show ahead. By the way, Jefferson Graham, who does photo walks, his dad, do you remember Jerry Graham in the Bay Area? I don't know if you were in the Bay Area then.
No, but I know the name.
Yeah, Jerry Graham was just a brilliant fixture on the Bay Area scene. He did a show called Bay Area Backroads. His son now has a really popular YouTube channel, and it's on Tubi, and it's all these other places. And he has photo walks, and what you can do with an iPhone is amazing, and he shares it with our viewers. So anyway, he's premiering an iPhone video shot in Paris. It's all the stuff that's Parisian and magnificent. So that happens today as well. So it's a lot of stuff coming up in a couple minutes.
Yeah, you get. I love your ideas. I love especially the crime stuff you do. I'm going to try to start a segment called Pod on Pod, where I talk about some other cool podcasts, and I really love these guys that the unsolved, because some of these podcasts have actually solved crimes.
Damn right. Yeah, I mean, high profile. Yes.
Yeah. And the police really don't, people think that, we always say on TV where the cops, stay out of your lane, but cops still love it. If you can bring information to cops, I mean, they don't want you out there chasing armed people,
Right. Although it's funny, I had Josh Mankiewicz from Dateline on my show, and we talked about this, and he said, when you're a private detective and you come in to the cops and you say, hey, I've got something for you, they're going, yeah. Why don't you go work out in divorcees or something? We got this. So there can be a little bit of, jurisdictional arrogance that can settle in occasionally. But you're right. Those cases, look, these cases are oftentimes reanimated by the online community even, so you're really good. We do a segment called Mark's Murder Mystery Monday.
That's what I love. I've heard that one. That's great.
Yeah, that's how my girlfriend does it, Courtney, and she's into all that stuff, that real crime stuff.
Aren't
So
you a little old to have girlfriends?
I don't know what do you say, partner? We've been together for 8 years. It's like a Goldie Hawn thing. What do you call? You know what I mean? Goldie Hawn.
I'm marrying somebody tomorrow. I'm an officiant tomorrow. I've done it 5 times now.
Look at you, must be good. You're getting
you got my number, baby. If you want to pop the question, I'm the guy.
It may happen. It may happen. I got to go jam.
I know you got to do a show. Go.
The Mark Thompson show. Come join us. We'll see you next time, Chip. Thank you, pal.
Bye. Very funny guy. He's for all his self-deprecation. It's an amazing show. All right. Thank you for watching, and please follow me on here. I know that this show is only in its 2nd week, and we're still building numbers. But I'm confident. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to do this Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. every day, and trying to get you the best guests and the best news and commentary all surrounding that. You can go to whatthefranklin.com or the YouTube channel with my name, Chip Franklin. And by the way, you can follow me on Twitter. And if you're on Twitter, let me know and I'll follow you back. Okay. That's my new thing to screw Elon Musk. I'm just going to, all the friends that want to follow me, and I have a lot of followers. I've lost about 20,000 during this whole thing. And I think a lot of them were bots, and I don't know what's going on with Twitter, but I'm not going anywhere right now. So if you're on Twitter, follow me. Again, please subscribe here, hit the bell so you know when the next thing's happening. And you guys have a wonderful weekend. I really appreciate you being here. Until then.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?